This is the Provoked Prawn, and this is the Roccat Vulcan 2 Mini. This is a 65% keyboard from Roccat, and an interesting one that includes a number of different highlights, including the Titan Optical switches and 30 dual LED smart keys, and I'll talk about what that means a bit later on. This is an unboxing video and review. I'm going to be talking to you about the experiences with this keyboard, showing you what you get in the box, and talking about the various highlights that include that dual LED setup that you can see mentioned on the box. I'm going to show off what that is later on, but basically there's 30 keys on this keyboard which have 2 LEDs instead of just one. As you'll have seen already from those initial clips, and you'll see more of later on, it has some striking RGB illumination thanks to the sort of raised key switch housing and thin keycaps, meaning that you can really get some really nice RGB out of it. Obviously it has per key RGB illumination as well. But the hidden highlights include 1000 Hz polling rate and those Titan Optical red switches, which give you a 1.4mm actuation and are guaranteed up to an insane 100 million clicks as well. So it's built to last. Now, when I first got out of the box, I thought it felt, reasonably affordable in the hand, which I think is a nice way of saying it feels cheap. It doesn't feel super cheap. It's a reasonably good looking keyboard and nicely constructed for the money that you're paying. And as you'll see, and my experience actually improved because I felt like the typing experience is pretty nice. Certainly not the quietest keyboard I've typed on, as you'll hear a typing test at the end, but a nice one with a number of really nice simple highlights to it as well. Simple things like the inclusion of the delete key in the top right, for example. Sometimes the smaller keyboards have some of their functions buried in function layers that make them a pain to use during everyday gaming or typing experiences, but you can see with this 65% layout you have the arrow keys and the delete key, and more on that later on. You also have a adjustable feet system on the underside, and as you'll see, USB-C plugs in at the top in the middle as well. Now this keyboard's available in 2 colors, black or white. The white one looks nicer. Unfortunately, I didn't get sent that one though, so I can't show you it. But this is a look at the RGB, and from various angles you'll see some very nice RGB lighting. Again, there will be a typing test at the end so that you can hear the audio for that without me talking over it. But I wanted to demonstrate the various different shots and highlights of it. You can see the various different angles, the RGB shining through the housing, and it is per key RGB, and this thing also has onboard memory as well, so you can customize things within Roccat Swarm software, but you can also switch between profiles on the fly and change RGB that way. You can see that the keycaps are removable, and they do have that Cherry MX classic style to them, but again, these switches are Titan Optical switches, so upgraded switches from Roccat. They include a smooth linear feel, so the linear switches, smooth action, perfect for gaming, 1.4mm of actuation, so really quick, 3.6mm of total travel. The stabilization's alright, you can see some wobble in some of it, but I didn't notice a terrible amount in the keycaps. You could see some of that in the spacebar. As I demonstrated, it does wiggle and wobble around a little bit, and that is something that you do often find with these sort of thinner, low-profile keycap designs, but it's not shockingly bad. So take away from that that it is a nice experience for the money and feels a lot more premium once you start using it than it does initially. You can see there are various different things you can do to adjust the lighting with a function key, and page up and page down adjust the brightness. You can also turn the lighting off on the fly. You can see on the tab button there's a button to switch profiles, and there are various other functions, including print screen, for example. You need to press function and O in order to activate that. And there are, as I said, really convenient setup in the sort of layout of it. So I really like having the delete key next to the backspace because I use delete a lot personally, and it's nice not to have to press the function button to access it. And it's the little things like that that make a difference to a keyboard like this. Obviously, having a compact form factor makes it convenient, but you don't want to lose out. You can see that there's also media playback buttons in Z, X, and C for pause, play, and skip, and also mute and volume up and down in M and comma and full stop. So there are some buttons and actions that you can access by just pressing that function key, and also that also gives you access to Roccat's Easy Shift, so you have the ability to program more keys into this from Roccat Swarm software as well. So I'll talk a bit more about that later on, but basically, even with a 65% keyboard, you can get access to loads of extra actions. You can see in various different lighting conditions that this thing really shines, so it is a very nice looking keyboard from various different angles and at various different lighting conditions, whether it's during the day, at night, or even under heavy lighting for video. It has a very small form factor, as you can see from this shot on the desk, and obviously that gives you more room for your mouse, but what you will hear is it's quiet. It's not as loud as blue switches or brown switches, but it's hardly the quietest keyboard around either. So just keep that in mind, that it might get picked up by your microphone, but it is comfortable to type on. My experience has actually been pretty good. There are some large gaps. If you're used to a keyboard with very small gaps between each key, and I use a lot of different keyboards, so I really feel this when I switch between them, then you might struggle initially to get used to the slightly wider gaps between these keys. The good thing about this is it allows you to potentially clean it a lot easier if it does get dust and dirt over time, because you can just blow some compressed air in there and get that dust out quite easily. And also, obviously, it adds to the RGB lighting and a nice glow in the surrounding area. Various different shots, and you'll also spy some other things in here with videos coming soon on the SteelSeries Arena speakers, and that's a very nice Corsair monitor that I'm trying out alongside the Razer mouse as well, so more on that soon. Here you can see a shot of what I was talking about with the onboard memory. You can see if you press Function and Tab, that switches between profiles and gives you some interesting changes in the RGB lighting. I'm going to dive into the Swarm software and show you more of what you can do, and then stick around for a sound test after that. And here we are with the Roccat Swarm software, a little gimmick that Roccat throws in here is you can click on this and then you can do the tippy-tappy sounds that will basically give you weird noises every time you type. I'd love to know how many people actually use that functionality, but it's there if you want it. Basically, every time you press the button, it makes the extra sound in your ears. And one of the other things you will notice is down the bottom you have 5 different profile settings that you can go between. And this is from pressing the Function key and Tab that I showed you already, which changes the RGB lighting, but also switches between the profiles. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the bottom. So you could set up different profiles for different uses, different games, maybe in Windows or whatever else you want to do. And then you go into key assignments. Now, a quick thing to mention is you will notice immediately that you do have these keys. You can see that some of them have this secondary layer on them. So if you go into this, you'll see when, for example, on this top row on the function keys and such, you have 1 and then F1. This is where your layers of lighting are lit up. So as I showed, essentially when you press the function key, it has 30 dual LEDs. What that means is you have 1 at the top and then 1 at the bottom. When you press the function key, it will light up the key in a slightly different position. So on the 1 key, for example, the F1 will be highlighted more obviously. What I found though is it isn't significantly different. You'll see that the 1 dims ever so slightly and the F1 lights up a little bit more, and it really doesn't make that much difference to it. What it does mean, however, is that the RGB on those keys shines a little bit more than on the others. So it's worth noting that it's not 2 LEDs per every key on the keyboard. It's just for the 30 keys that have an additional action. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, for example. The ones with the media playback buttons that I showed you earlier on, they have it. The print screen button, but like WASD and other keys around here don't. So they don't have those extra dual LEDs, which is a shame because I think if they'd thrown it into every key, potentially you'd have a lot more RGB lighting. It'd be even brighter, but that's not the point. The idea is to basically highlight the additional button presses. But the trouble is the standard one, the top one, doesn't dim as much as it probably should when the other one's lighting up, so it doesn't really become that visible. And that's my opinion anyway on it. But that's an interesting point, I think. Now, there are some other things. You'll notice that the caps lock button has the easy shift functionality on it. So you can see down the bottom here, it says easy shift. And that's when game mode is activated. Now, game mode is on the Windows key, which you can't highlight. But what you need to do is basically press the function key and the Windows key together. And that turns on game mode. When you do that, the Windows key turns white to let you know that that game mode is activated. That then disables caps lock, and instead what it does is it enables that button to become easy shift. So that then allows for easy shift. And what easy shift is, if you're not aware already, is a secondary layer of actions. So that means that you can set up new button presses for other buttons. So for example, you could change A to be something completely different. You drag in a macro, you can start recording. Stop recording. Okay, and now we're on the secondary layer. So now what I've got is I've got a macro assigned to A under easy shift. So as long as game mode's activated, that'll work. So what we can do is we can open up Notepad, and I can just use the A key as normal. But if I press easy shift, as in caps lock and A, it will then do the macro that I created, where it just says, hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, this is the Provoked Prawn. And you can interrupt it by just pressing it again. And so you can see that you can customize that. Now that works across a lot of the other keys. Basically any of the keys that you can click on, you can see that you have this easy shift layer. Obviously, if it already has a secondary action, one of the number keys, for example, the media keys, then you can't do an easy shift on that. But otherwise you have a lot of possibility for adding in extra layers of actions. So it's really customizable. And obviously this is on a per profile basis as well. So you have lots of different programmable options in there. You'll also get an idea of what you can't add in if you click on it, and it's got a deny button on it basically. So loads that you can do in there. Now in the RGB section, you'll see that you have the ability to change between various different colors. So we've got wave, you've got snake, which snakes its way across the keyboard. Lighting off, you can turn that off. And you'll also notice that you could do that on the keyboard itself with hardware buttons. So you can just press the function button and control to turn the lighting on and off at hardware level with relative ease as well. So you can do that. You can go fully lit, breathing, fade effects, ripple effects. And I really personally like the AIMO intelligent lighting. I've always liked that on there. You also have the ability to select specific zones and change colors through various different themes. So you can apply lighting to the keyboard in various different places. You see that you have that option. You can also do it on a per key basis. So you can select the keys that you want to change the color of and add in different colors there specifically to them. So you have an option to do per key illumination for this as well. So loads of extra programmability and lots of things that you can do within Swarm software. And then obviously, as I said, there's onboard memory, so you can switch between it. And you won't necessarily need to be running the Swarm software as well. So this has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful. If you did, subscribe, smash that like button, and let me know in the comments what you think. That'll really help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, big thanks to my YouTube members, and be sure to stick around now to hear a sound test.